So welcome everyone, and many thanks for your participation in this webinar. I will share my screen. So welcome to the webinar Planning Microsoft Fabric. We are proud that we are joined by Leon Ederlis, the Chief Product Officer, Enterprise Planning of Lumel. And the meeting will be recorded. The agenda, just a short introduction, then we get or Leon will show us the demo and planning in Microsoft Fabric. Then we do have some information regarding training events in the community, and then also some contact details. Short introduction to myself. Who am I? My name is Michael. I was working in finance and controlling for many years, and because I was much more interested in BI projects than doing weekly or monthly or quarterly closings, I joined IT-Logix as a consultant data and analytics in the beginning of this year. IT-Logix is a long-term partner of Lumel, and we are using their products in our projects. This year we started using, we started the first project where we are using Lumel EPM. That's the predecessor or the fundamental layer or basis of Fabric planning. And no further ado, I will pass on to Liran. It's your stage.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I'm very excited to be here. Maybe just a quick introduction before I'm showing my screen. I'm with Lumel, and I will explain about the Lumel and Fabric plan and how those relationships are kind of playing together. I was actually in Switzerland just 2 weeks ago, so still have the good taste of some of the nice chocolate around. So happy to be here, and I just heard that I left before the weather became very warm, so it's also good to be here. So without any further ado, what I'm going to do today, I'm going to introduce a little bit, give you the background of Fabric Plan, give you the background about Lumel and where we are, and I'm going to do not like a standard presentation. I will show some slides, but I will jump between my slide deck and the application, so we can see what are the unique parts of the solution and so on. And as we mentioned, we're going to have some Q&A session, but if you want to ask the session, it's not a huge group of people. If you want to ask the question, if you want me to hold for a second, just try to write it in the Q&A section, and I will try to respond. If I'm not watching something, Michael, please let me know that I need to watch a question. So anyhow, let me share my screen again. Amazing. So we're introducing Fabric planning today, and for those who don't know, I hope everyone who joined already know, the Fabric plan is now a Microsoft product. It's already available in most regions that are using Fabric already. So you can use it without installation. I will speak about Lumel in a second, but there is no need to connect with any third party and so on. If you have Microsoft Fabric agreement, if you are using Fabric, if you are in the most regions, no installation, it's already there and it's already available. So that's kind of the news. Right now, we are calling that plan preview because it's not an official product. It's not an official release, sorry, it's an official product, but not an official release. There will be a GA announcement within about a month. We are targeting general availability, making it in an official release in about a month. Good news is that during this time, there is also no direct billing, so you can use it and there is no billing for the product. Now, I promised to explain a little bit about the relationship between Lumel and Microsoft. So Lumel has been around for over 14 years. We have been doing a lot of BI services and divested those services into solutions that are software solution. We served over 3,000 customers in the Power BI ecospace. We created a lot of application info review tools with over 9 different products. We still have over 9 different products in the Power BI ecosystem. And we realized that customer needs more than just the Power BI add-on. So that's where we started our journey with developing a solution for Fabric. And our solution, our planning solution, we're always award-winning for innovation, customer recommendation, and so on. And we use that knowledge in order to build this solution together as a co-venture with Microsoft and make it available for all customer users. Now, the question around that is that, and also maybe just a legal disclaimer by nature, I'm presenting here Lumel as a business partner, as the, in a way, the IP behind that, but definitely I'm not representing Microsoft. This is just, some legal stuff that sometimes we want to introduce. Now, the question is, Power BI is existing almost everywhere, right? And there might be a question, okay, so we have Power BI and we have semantic model, and usually, you can raise your hand if you're using Power BI. I guess all of you using Power BI and semantic models. And you're not alone if you're doing that, because there are over 20 million semantic model around the world and over 35 million people that are Power BI users. And if you ask yourself, there's so much usability around Power BI, then how this kind of Lumel piece is coming in piece, or or the Fabric planning, is that the adoption is amazing, right, of Power BI and semantic model, but Power BI is explaining you what was happening, and the question is, where do you track what should happen? Where do you track your plans? And that's exactly why Microsoft decided to embed the planning solutions as part of Microsoft Fabric. So those who are not familiar with the Microsoft Fabric, the way I like to explain it, is a huge umbrella that includes different data services. It's including the databases, it included the integration tool, analytic tool, real-time intelligence that shows the data that is already existing, what's going on. It includes the Power BI that takes the different data sources into semantic layers that explain the data and allow you to analyze them. And now, once you have the data, the insight, the analytics, now you can use the planning to think about what's next in the organization. Copilot, OneLake, and of course AI and agentic capabilities are part of Fabric as well, and I'll speak about that in the vision. So this Fabric plan was designed to support different use cases of planning. I know that most of the people here are coming with a background in core finance, which is great. And that's a typical use case of planning in organization, is talking about budget, forecast, how you approve that, how you make adjustment over time. That's kind of the typical use case. But we actually designed this tool, and I think that even more users are using that for other purposes than only finance. And that means that some organization, manufacturing companies, they're using it for demand planning, S&OP planning. There might be AI infrastructure that is already existing, and you want to look at the AI prediction and adjust it. So that could be other use case. Sometimes we start with a small or relatively small departmental solution. I want to do my project tracking, my HR planning, my OPEX, my contracts management. So there are many use cases for enterprise planning. The important piece is that the tool was designed to support either a sophisticated enterprise-wide system or maybe even just a simple use case that you would like to start with. The advantage is that you will see in a moment, the starting point is really easy. Now, the question, I try to say that from a Microsoft perspective, that was a necessity to say, well, we want to have in that data umbrella of Fabric a place where we want to use our planning. But what happens in the market? So what are happening? What other tools in the market already doing a planning? How we compare a Fabric plan in compare with what's in the market? So I'm doing EPM for like 30 years. And if I'm trying to understand what is happening in the market with what Fabric Plan is doing, there are four major gaps that we try to bridge. The first one is that if we say that you do have a data hub in Fabric and you have a data warehouse that your organization already spent money and time to create, and planning is done in Excel or planning is done in another system, it means that you are creating data silos. Now, I'm sure that everyone would agree with me that you don't want to have data silos because forward-looking organization. You want data to be unified. You want data in the same platform. You want data ready for AI. So putting the data in one place, again, in that case, in Fabric, both planning data and actual data will prevent those silos that other third-party solution or Excel spreadsheet will create. Now, if you are working with a third-party solution, the problem is that you always need to do integration. You have a planning system that requires data to go in and out all the time, and that's by nature also complicated. So the complication sometimes is coming from the different interfaces, but the complication coming that if your planning system is a sophisticated Excel files with connection between them or macros or another EPM vendor, that means that you need to manage your data warehouse with one skill set, and then you have another skill set for another system. So that's a gap in an area that we try to simplify the technology that's make it more complicated. And last but not least, if you are managing the data in a third-party solution, it's expensive because you need to deal with silos, integration, and so on. So I want to start actually with that point that it's sometimes too expensive, and usually it's at the end. You're talking about price after you convince customers that, oh, this is what you need to know. But I actually like to start with that at the beginning because the idea was to create something that is usable by a lot of people, and it's very fair in terms of pricing. And we want to tackle that kind of too expensive problem of some of the other EPM solutions. So the concept, number one, is that you don't need to acquire any licenses in advance. Most software vendor right now will require you to say, okay, now here is a multi-year deal you need to engage with. Fabric Plan is not asking you to do any upfront commitment if you don't want to. The second piece around that is that the billing for the using Fabric Plan is a monthly billing, and it's only based on usage. Now, sometimes what happens with the traditional software models is that, well, I have roughly 100 users and you need to pay for those 100 users for the full year. This model is saying, no, if 1 month you had 100 users using and the other months people were on vacation, only 80 people were using, so you need to pay only for 80 people and not for 100. So the billing is coming up monthly and it's coming only based on the usage. The next piece around that is that it's only by the type of the usage. So we identify 3 usage types. One is a viewer, someone that is just to view the data in the system. Another one is a stakeholder or a contributor that can come into the system and make adjustment to plan, commenting or something like that. And the planner, which is like a system admin. Now, I don't have to be a planner for 12 months. I could be a planner maybe only 1 month a year when I'm preparing, new templates. So I will be charged as a planner only for that specific month, and the rest of the year I might be a stakeholder or a viewer. So the billing is based only on the different activities type, and it's done only based on actual usage. And there is no real billing of a dollar value or Swiss franc in that case. The billing is based on your capacity units in Fabric. So the usage is getting translated into monthly session for every user, and that is calculated as consumption units in Fabric. If you already have your MAC commitment with Microsoft, if you already have Fabric units available, you can use that. And that will be just another usage of your Fabric capacity together with storage and other processing like Power BI. So very fair pricing, not a separate license. It's using your Fabric capacity. And by nature, if you have good arrangement and commitment to Fabric capacity, it could be a 40 to 80% cheaper than any other EPM solution in the market. So once we put the pricing and the strategy, why we're doing that, let's speak about how we do that and what Fabric Plan is. And the most important piece about Fabric Plan is Fabric Plan does not require you to do any data integration. Fabric Plan is working on top of semantic model, and working on top of semantic model should help us to avoid data silos and the heavy integration. We spoke about that if you are using other solution. So a typical solution looks like that. You have your operating system. You usually create a data lake and a Power BI on top of that. And then if you do have another EPM solution, you always need to integrate data to that EPM solution. That's the silo that is preventing you from, future AI and integrative AI across organization. And then you need to write the data back. So that would be with a typical solution. As I mentioned, Fabric Plan is staying on top of your semantic model and literally allow you to plan where data reside. And that's why I want to start with my first demo of today. And let's go here. What I did before this session, I just created a connection to my semantic model and to my plan item. And I just created a couple of use cases so I can show you different use cases very quickly during the presentation. And the way I want to do it together with you is I want to do it really as a live exercise together. So when I'm talking about plan where data resides, the right side is my semantic model. And the semantic model is something that is already existing in your Power BI. So again, if you did that span, you created Power BI, you have data lake behind that. We're just using the same existing data. You don't need to create a separate database installation or anything like that. What I did before this session, I took my numbers of 2025. So here is my 2025 data. I'm looking at the gross revenue, and I decided that I want to look at 2025 in order to plan the data for 2026. Again, let's say for a second that we're taking ourselves a couple of months backward. I can decide what are the dimensions that will be participating in this exercise. In that specific case, I took my product division, my product family, and below that, the different distribution channels that I'm using in order to distribute the product. Now in Power BI, you can do that. You can drag and drop any data and create a report. In Power BI, you cannot create budget, right? And that's one of the differentiator here. What I am going to do here, I want to say that, well, let's create a series that will be my 2026 gross revenue budget. So I'm doing that, and I will hit create. And now I'm having my gross revenue of 2025 side by side with my gross revenue of 2026. That's a very basic one, and I can actually ask to add an aggregation. So now I can see even the total year of 2026 versus the total of 2025. They are equal because I started with a copy. Now I want to say, well, the next year I want to grow from 2.9 billion into 3.2 billion, like roughly 10%. So I can go here and say 3.2 billion. And you can see that the system instantly is cascading the data down. So here is like a very nice use case where I can just change a data at the top, and that will be proportionally cascade down. And I can write this data very quickly into the system. I can go into a specific area, so I can open, the months of February of next year, and I can change the data here and change that maybe for 4 million, and I can keep those changing going on as much as I want. If I really want to say, well, the chocolate division is going to be 500 million, I can go here, change it to 500 million, and in order to make sure that that is not keeping changing, I can lock this cell. Once the cell is locked, I cannot change it anymore, and I cannot change the data below that. But I can go back here and change back to 3.2 billion. And now the change of the 3.2 billion will affect only other product line. Let's change it again so you can see that 3.2 billion. It's the 3.3 billion. So you can see because chocolate is locked, then the allocation goes to all the other. The idea around that is that, again, just as a very basic starting point, we can create data entry on top of data that is already existing in our semantic layer. We can do that bottom up or top down. The next piece that I want to add here is to say, well, sometimes people want to do some commentary information around that. So I can definitely insert a comment and place to put some notes. So now I can definitely go here and say that, that's some sort of information that management decided on 500 million, right? So you can add comment into your report as well. The next question would be, well, I really want it to be very visible to people. What is the variance between 2025 and 2026? So I can go into planning and I can add a column with a formula. For those of you who are more technical, you don't need to go to DAX and create DAX measures because you're in that planning sheet. You can create formula the same as you would create in Excel. So I can say, okay, here is my variance. And my variance could be taking my 2026 minus the gross revenue of 2025, just creating that. So now I'm having the variance here, and the variance will be consistent with us, right, on an annual level. And once I'm expanding that, I can see the variance for each and every quarter. In some cases, you want the variance not to be just a flat number. Let's say in that case, maybe I'm reducing something here, right? And you want to see better when variances might be negative or positive. So I can go here and we have formatting. We can use conditional formatting, and we can use that with maybe a scale. We can see some different options here. And that's literally kind of another way to see variances very quickly. So we can add formulas, we can enter data, we can add new series, we can have notes. The other piece is that how do we collaborate? Collaboration usually means in two different ways. One way of collaboration is that I really don't like that it's so low compared to last year, and I really want someone maybe to update that. So I can go here and add a collaborative comment. In that use case, I will be maybe write to one of my colleagues, and I will ask him, can you increase the plan? Right? And now what happens once I'm doing this collaborative comment in our previous version, those who knows InfoRiver, we used to send an email. Now people said, no, we really need commenting to be live. So what happens is connecting behind the scene to Microsoft Teams, and Microsoft Teams is now creating a Teams message on my behalf, not on the system behalf, to Ashwant, my colleague, and he will get a notification that he needs to update that. And he can always come here and reply, did that, right? So we can track it. But the idea is that maybe I just have a question for him and he can reply, and then that communication is kept with the system, with the people that are using the system, and allow you to track those changes. So one way of collaborating is really creating those comments and create conversation about data and around tasks in the system. The other way of collaboration would be potentially to do something else, and that might be to insert a column or create or use our workflow capability. I would just use the column just to make it simple for now, but you can create a column here that will allow people to submit their plan. And then once we have that, I can go here and I can maybe let's expand it a little bit, and I can get into a specific row and check that's in review, that was maybe submitted or approved. And we have some in-cell option here that say, well, I want to approve all chocolate in once. So this is literally just either as a copy paste or as a shortcut from the menu. Now I can see what is approved. By nature, in real system, what we're doing, we will be taking that approval flow and we lock the system, maybe create email, and so on. All the data that we're doing here is always getting into a write-back table. So I will not demonstrate it here just because we don't have a lot of time and I want to show you many other features, but everything that we're planning here is going back with a write-back to the database. So that version that we created, the approved budget, all the budget, different scenarios, all of them going back to the database, and we can use it either for reporting purposes, and maybe based on the gross revenue, I can now calculate COGS, so we can reuse this data. And the data is available, again, where data resides in your data warehouse. Now, usually when I'm showing that, some people will say, well, we have a little bit more sophisticated type of a budget planning, and the budget planning might be requires me to do some budget scenarios, but maybe even budget drivers. Just to show you something very simple, in that scenario, very similar use case, I just before the session just duplicated that. And now I want to say, well, I really want to change the drivers rather than changing the data. So I can do that as well. And I can say maybe some certain area are going to grow only in 4%, right? So I can do the 4% and I can copy and paste. And once we do that, you can see that every change in those percentage will instantly be changing my 2026 value. So we can also do the driver-based planning as a percentage, as a number, or as a very sophisticated type of a formula. So I'm pausing here. I just wanted to say this is a use case of a budget, very simple, very quick. Literally, we build it together. If you watch the recording, you will see that the net time to build another set of data with approval, with changes to the data was not more than 5 minutes. Real system will take a bit longer because there are more consideration, but we are supporting the data entry, top-down approval, commentary, information, formula, driver-based, and even scenario that I'm going to show next. Now, the reason I'm mentioning that is that plan where data reside is more than just the data entry. And as I spoke about, you really want to make sure that everything you need is there. And that's what we tried to do when we designed Fabric Plan. We made sure that we can support top-down, bottom-up planning, driver-based planning, strategic plans, self-service capability that people can do it by themselves. Everything needs to be managed by auditing log and so on. So this is all part of what is existing in Fabric Plan, and we are supporting a lot of different capabilities. One of the important questions that sometimes coming out of that support is that, well, you know, I'm doing budget once a year, but every week or every month or every quarter, I'm doing my rolling forecast. And rolling forecast is like an interesting beast because rolling forecast, it's not just, okay, now I'm planning for 12 months. It's literally, well, if I'm now at the end of February, and I have, or maybe at the beginning of March, I already have February data, I want to plan for the next 10 months, but see the actual of 2 months. And usually I want to do that where maybe my forecast is defaulted into budget. So I will start my forecast when I'm saying I'm seeing 10 months of budget and 2 months of actual, combining together and decide how to do that. In some cases, I want to do it as a manual adjustment. Sometimes I might be wanted to do like statistical forecast. So the beauty in what I'm going to show you, again, back again to my demo, is that forecasting is coming literally out of the box, and the different options that rolling forecast allowing you here is really unlimited. So what I have here, I have my gross revenue actual, okay, for 24-25. I have my gross revenue for 2026, and my gross revenue budget was already coming in from my previous planning, right? Now in 2026, I don't have actual yet, but if I open Q1, you can see that I actually do have actual for 2 months, for January and February, and then I don't have for March and going forward. So to remind you, my task would be to say, okay, now I want to create a forecast that will take 2 actual months and 10 budget months. So the way I'm doing that, I will go into my modeling tab and I will create a forecast. And my forecast will say close period, which means, you know, those are the actual period or gross revenue. And open period, I really want to default them. I want to start my open period, my rolling forecast data. I want to default it into my budget. And that's it. Literally just a few clicks. And now I have my forecast. Let's collapse 2026 so we can see that, right? So 2026 data, sorry, I need to do something else. 2026 data is now defaulted to budget, okay? We can see the 2026 forecast is equal to budget, but I really want this forecast to close the 2 months, the January and February, I want them to be actual. So I will close period. And I want to do a close because I already have actual of 2 months. I really want to close by February of 2026. So now I'm closing the period, and what happens in my forecast version is that January and February are now overridden with actual, and my March going forward is defaulted to my budget. So I see actual on several months, and I see forecast at the other months. And that's, again, very quickly coming immediately out of the box. let's say that they want to compare the now, and by the way, people can now go here. They cannot change the budget because the budget is now locked. So you can see I cannot change the budget. But if they want to change the forecast can be overridden. So the forecast is just defaulted to budget, but people can make the changes on top of the budget text. We have another cool option here that is coming as an additional component, and that would be the statistical planning capability. So maybe I want to say people can make their own forecast, but I really want them to show what statistics says in compared to their plan. For that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to first, let's us create another statistical forecast measure. Again, I want this statistical forecast to start on March and at the end of the year. And let's save that. To make our view maybe a bit nicer, I will just hide a couple of columns here, okay? So let's hide the actual and the budget and keep only my statistical forecast so you can see it better in the presentation. Now again, statistical forecast is starting on March. And what we have here is the option to hit my predict function. My predict function is using historical value. And when I'm running the forecast, it will show the forecast with the different trend. Now, this is really cool because if I'm looking at the trends of chocolate, right, and let's run that as a prediction here, the trend of chocolate, you see, it's a little bit different than if I will go to another product group, maybe like my, desserts. Go here to desserts and predict. So it's a different distribution. And what we're doing here when we are using, if we do want to use the statistical forecast, I'm setting it up to be bottom up. And that means that in that specific case, the statistical forecast will go to each one of my product line and channels, and it will create a sole prediction at the row level. The other option is to do a prediction for the full company and then do just a top-down allocation for that. But the bottom up in this specific business makes more sense. I can add into that a growth factor, and I can run the forecast and save that. So here is now my statistical forecast. And that could be now very easily get compared. Let's go back here and bring my initial forecast. So now I can easily compare between my forecast and my statistical forecast, where they are similar or not. And again, I can do variance analysis. On top of that, just to make sure that we all aligned, we can also do some scenarios and simulation. So I can go here into my scenario, and I can decide that in my scenario, I really want to change only the forecast, not the statistical forecast. And then you can see here that now scenario is active. So I have my base and my scenario down here. And now I can do in my scenario changes to my forecast, maybe decrease a little bit of March, but increasing Q2. And maybe I can still go into a specific area and say, people like more chocolate and less healthy sweets, so maybe we'll reduce a little bit of those. So all of those options, again, coming out of the box with scenario, there are different layouts to analyzing scenario, and one of those layouts is actually a tree layout, where I can say I really want to see my forecast, compare with my statistical forecast, and you can see that visuals coming here, and you can analyze that, and you can actually even create the simulation from this place as well, and see the impact and analyzing that. This driver-based tree is actually allowing you to do more than that when you have a more sophisticated planning models. So I'll pause here for a second. I just want to kind of recap, go back in our presentation and show you that we literally remove complexity. I was able to show you statistical forecast, compare with manual forecast that is defaulted to budget, with approval, with scenario and simulation without writing a single line of code. And that's the idea around that we want to simplify and remove the complexity. Before I'm going next, by the way, if you do have questions, if you do have requests, I see that no one was writing anything. If you just even want to give me a feedback, what's your impression so far? Is it clear? Is it amazing? So please feel free to write in the chat, even if that's not a question. Just a general feedback. I would love to see that as well. So we said that we are making everything as a no code, and we want to kind of make sure that we are removing the complexity out of the equation. One way of doing that is the no code, the features that are built in, like, the forecast and so on. But there is also another concept here. The concept is that we are not building the system with different components, like a studio for developers and another user interface. Everything is like what you see is what you get. And we designed 3 different interfaces for the end user. The way I like to explain it to business users is that people who used to work with Excel, they use with Excel a lot of different reports and planning and models, but it's still Excel. Like, it's always the same grid, the same user interface. We actually created 3 different models, business models. All of them are no-code business model. One of them is the enterprise planning model that I was just presenting. And again, it has dozens of other features that we don't have enough time to present today. And the other one is Power Table. Power Table is our tool to manage reference data. I'm going to explain that in a few moments. And we have the intelligence sheet that allowing us to create unlimited type of dashboarding and reporting, and even interactive planning and dashboarding reports all together. Everything here is on top of your existing database and on top of Fabric, of course. So I covered the enterprise planning piece. I showed that. Let me show you and speak a little bit about the data management and why is it so important. So I mentioned I worked with hundreds of customers in my career, and one of the reasons to do an EPM solution or to take the data outside is because sometimes you need an extra hierarchy. Sometimes you want to order products in a different order. You want to add new potential customers. You want to map your GL account into the right hierarchy. So it could be a lot of use cases. Sometimes even when you just start your planning for HR as an example, you want to use your current roster and plan based on that and not keep seeing, what is getting changed over there. So that's literally where Power Table is coming in. It comes to allow you to manage dimensions quickly with approval flow. It allows you to track status of some data and information. It allows you to have a data collection capabilities like form. It even allows you to do project tracking and a lot of other automation. So this tool could be very handy for data administrators in the organization, but also it could be very powerful for finance people and planning experts that really want some place where they can manage hierarchies, dimensions, and basic data for planning. Now, switching back to my screen, what I did, again, just a little bit before this webinar, I connected to my database and I connected to my customer dimension. And that's the initial view. So when I'm using Power Table to connect, I'm getting the connection to my database with the table that I was connecting to. You can see that this user interface is different because it's a different use case. Now I really manage the reference data and the core data. This is my client dimension, and let's say that I do want to allow some people to make updates here. One example could be that, well, I want to make sure that I'm classifying customers correctly, maybe based on their credit rating, okay? So I can have people updating the credit rating. The way to do that and making sure that no one is putting, let's say, undesired data in credit rating is also to say, well, I'm going here and I want to edit the way it's presented and making sure that this is literally something that is using only allowed data, and I'm not allowing to create an additional values that are not in my list of values in this column. And you can see that doing that is very quickly. And now if I want to change that, I can change it only for the credit rating that are existing. In this database, we don't have C credit rating, or I don't have AAA, so I will not be able to use something that is not allowed. On top of that, we will have in our setup the ability to manage access and to say maybe I'm allowing one person to change only that specific column of credit score, but he cannot add new customers, he cannot change other field. So we have two options to manage access into this table. One is just by deciding what would be the allowed value at each and every field. And the other pace here is to make sure that we're giving access to people only for what they are allowed to get access to. Another nice example I would like to put here, this kind of, it's a yes, no, I can edit that, and instead even having people doing a selection, that could be a simple checkbox that goes to either yes or no. And now saving that, and that's very easy now. If I want to change something, then I can easily change it here. Okay. This tool has a lot of other capabilities. I will just show some of them, but because we want to make sure that everything is auditable and traceable, we do have a full audit log for all changes, but we also have approval flow. Now you can see once I'm making changes here, I can save them to the database, which means that the data will be saved back. But I can also say, well, actually, I don't want anyone to save to the database without someone approving that. So I will do the approval for myself, again, just for the sake of this webinar. And now we can see once approval flow is activated, the changes are here, but I cannot save them to the database. I can only submit them for a review. Once I submit them for review, I want to write a reason for that. I want to ask a due date until when I need to get this, and maybe say this is really important. Please give me that approval quickly. And once that is done, the system is showing back the original state with a comment that it goes to approval. And I'm, as an approver, I can see that I'm having some requests, and I can check the details of each one of those requests and to decide whether I want to approve those changes, request changes, or reject them. So approval flow is there. And as I mentioned, there are a bunch of other capabilities that we will not have the time to cover today, but some of them is find and replace. Some other capabilities are related more to the ability to create like a group by. Maybe I want to group customer by a customer group and a channel or something like that, right? So could be different ways even to present it. So the end user can get access and manage reference data in a modern way, secured way, auditable way, and so on. So that's the power table. Again, this is coming complementary with planning. You can use application just to manage data, and you can use it side by side with your planning application. So let's say when I'm resegmenting my customer, that will reflect my baseline for planning, and then I can use planning on top of that. So that was power table. As a reference data management, that was my demo, and you can see a different example that, it could be visualized very nicely. And as I mentioned, there is actually a way, I plan to present it today, but I think we will not have enough time to that if you have, let's say, project management data, you can even change the view and see the data as a Gantt chart. This is one of our previous product that we just took and embedded here because we said Fabric needs to have it all. The last piece, I said we have two business components. One of them is power table, is the planning sheet. And then we have also integrated intelligence. This is our ability to say, let's create something collaborative. Let's create something that is including planning, power table, and the different visuals of the data that we have either in the planning system or in our semantic model. This has been designed for many different use cases. Paginations report, financial report that you can design as a standard financial reports, interactive dashboard. When you want to do a customization to the UI, like filters, links, and so on, all of those capabilities are existing there. And for those of you who are following IBCS, the International Business Communication Standard, this is, as far as I know, one of the only tools in the market that has 100% capabilities of IBCS. So it's fully IBCS compliance. All the IBCS notations are existing and they are out of the box here. So IBCS is here. And then the capabilities of the intelligence sheet are pretty robust and interesting. You can see it here. And I think we do have time just to go back into my planning application, and I can easily go to home, create a new intelligence sheet, and I can show you how intelligence sheet can allow you to create dashboards even without being necessarily expert. So one idea is to say, I do want maybe to start with a chart. Let's say I want a bar chart, and this bar chart needs to show me my gross revenue. And I want to see my gross revenue in compared to my gross revenue budget, and maybe even compared to my net revenue. So I'm starting by selecting the relevant data. The chart will start appearing here based on the data I want to see. Now I want to see that maybe also across my different divisions and potentially even over time, right? So that would be something that I can definitely add into the visual as well. So you will see in a few seconds, the visual will grow and will show us the information we want to see by the different, here, I can see each and every quarter by itself and analyze that the way I want. Can create that super interactive, and I can go here and say, well, actually, I want to do my planning when I'm seeing this data change and the charge getting changed and so on. We can do that as well, and I can add my planning sheet. Let's take the budget, for example, here, my budget sheet here. So I'm creating like literally in a few clicks, a very nice and interactive sort of a planning, going with charts. The charts can be moving away when data is changing and so on. So that is the third part of the Fabric Plan solution. We said we have planning, we have power tables, and we have intelligence. They're all here, they're all accessible. And I think I want to give another 10 minutes for Q&A. So just my final notes around that. The first one is that you can start instantly. You have IT-Logix to support you, and you don't need to make any installation. If you're already a Fabric user, you can start that. It's built as a no-code solution, but by nature, having partners, having support to build that, it's easy, and then it's easy to maintain it and to grow over time. My recommendation for customers, you don't necessarily need to start with a huge project. You can start just with a simple use case, actual versus variance report, and grow from them. But that's, again, on the other hand, if you need to start your budget cycle in September, you still have a lot of time to build a proper planning application, definitely with this tool. And I want to add up with the vision. I didn't speak too much about AI, so definitely just to say we are going to be in GA in about a month. And after that, we will be working on that. We're already working on that second generation, how everything is connected with AI. And AI will definitely going to be part of this platform with the ability to create automated reports, agentic AI, and so on. When I was 2 weeks ago in Switzerland, I was in the IBCS conference, and we actually did a first demo showing, how you can create IBCS dashboard just by prompting and asking that from the AI agent. So that's definitely the vision. In that sense, thank you, and that would be the time to open for questions.
So many thanks, Liran. Maybe I'll break the ice and start with some questions. So which item in Fab, because of the items of planning, power table, and intelligence, is the one you like the most, or do you think it's the greatest game changer?
Wow, that's I have also 3 kids, right? And it's almost like if you said which one of my kids I like the best, right? I like all of them, and I like that as a family together, right? That's the best part, that we're all together. So I think what I really like is that we have everything together in one place, and I want to explain that because you mentioned IT-Logix worked with Lumel for many years, and you worked on the different component. I think you would agree with me that it was always confusing because in the Power BI ecosystem, planning and analytics plus were separate tools, and how you combine them together, even if we tried a lot, it wasn't looking so native. So I think what I really like is that now we have the analytics, the planning, and the data management all together. It's natively connected. I didn't show that, but the data is flowing from one sheet, your planning sheet can consume data from the Power Table, and all can be consumed in other planning sheet or in intelligence sheets. So literally, what is really nice is that all works as one family together in one product, right?
But could we even say that the added value of the workload, or that the workload itself, the value is bigger than the sum of its parts? So having everything integrated is the big thing.
Absolutely, and we also see that it's one tool that can use for different purposes. Sometimes in calls when we have with customers, IT guy says, "Oh, we need that Power Table. We don't care if you want planning or not. We need to use the Power Table." So that's like a very common feedback that we're seeing. But then again, the value is definitely greater than the components, because that integration, that is everything together so seamlessly, it works perfectly fine. Yeah.
And coming back to the IBCS certification, what does that mean for you? I think that's really something, a big achievement you could make. So
Yes,
as you said, there aren't not many solutions that are IBCS certificated out of the box.
Right. Let me just if we're already talking about that. So just to be very clear and nice, so this is a chart, right? And this is the ability to say, okay, those are kind of standard charts, but now I really want to use a specific IBCS chart, and literally within like a click of a button, you can switch from a standard chart into an IBCS chart. That could be one example. Maybe not the best one because I'm not using the right actual versus budget. But number one, the most important piece is that this is part of that. Personally, I'm also teaching storytelling. This is I'm doing in my side time. And when I got certified for IBCS, my main concern was that IBCS was very difficult to achieve in a technology tool. And I'm really proud that I could be supporting bringing that into Microsoft, and say that Microsoft is now IBCS certified. For those who are familiar with that or not, IBCS got like just 2 weeks ago an official ISO standard as well. So I think this is coming all together, that we have the opportunity not just to use a standard for visualization, but also to be proud enough and to say this is now an ISO standard. It has a lot of added value. We just saw a research that it takes 50% less time to analyze data in IBCS format than in standard format. So it gives a great value to the platform, to myself, and I like IBCS, and also maybe as a way to grow that concept of making storytelling and communication better and easier.
So if there are no further questions, then we'll show the closing slide. So many thanks again, Liran, and many thanks to all the participants. So I'll show my screen again. Just if you're interested in other events and trainings, I will post the link to all those trainings and events afterwards in the chat. And we also have maybe that's the most interesting one for you, for the audience we're having today. That's mostly people from finance and controlling. We had just last week our first Finance Meets Data event. That was a big success, and we're already planning the next one. So keep looking at our event page, and if it's popping up, we would be very thankful, and I think it's a great opportunity to join the event then. And a little side note, we also have a small community, or it's not that small anymore, the BI champions, which we meet about every 3 weeks and are discussing specific topics just regarding business intelligence, data warehousing, and stuff like that. And if you're interested, you also can register on the BI Champions homepage. So thanks again. And if you have more questions, don't hesitate to contact Samuel or myself. And thank you for joining and have a great evening. Bye.
Thank you.